Now you can move, scale, rotate, stretch elements using the transform property. And I'm going to use this website here to show you one of the commands within the transform to rotate. So what I have here, I have a graphic and just a simple caption right below the graphic itself. So this is just a standard generic image added that I've taken at a golf tournament and so forth, and I just have a little caption down below it. Now what I want to do is I want to go in and add a little more creativity to this. So I'm going to do, I'm going to rotate the image and the text in this area that's on the right hand side. And then we're also going to add some extra styling to help just make it stand out from the rest of the page. Because when you add just an image, which is great, it does grab attention, but what else can you do to it? And this is where the rotating style feature can come in play, as well as the other styles to work with. So let's take a look at the coding and see how it's set up. So right now what I have here in my column 3 section, which is allowing me to have my divs side by side for a couple columns that I'm working with, I have in here another div tag called class equals figure. Now within that div tag I have an image tag, I have the right size, I have the source, nothing major here. Then what I'm doing is I'm putting a little extra break here so I can have my text right below the image so it's not on the right hand side. And I just have here, it says need more help, contact me today. And that's going to go right in the div tag, because what we want to do is we want to apply a style to the div tag to help us rotate and bring out that information that we need. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here into my style sheet, and I'm going to add a dot figure to apply it to the class that I have here. And what I can do, if you really want to see it, we can just actually apply the rotate property to see that transformation. To type this in, what we're going to do here, let me zoom in just a little bit. We're going to type in the keyword transform, followed by a colon, and we're going to type in the word rotate. Then in parentheses, we're going to have to indicate what we want to, how much degrees we want to rotate. So I'm going to do simply 3 DEG on that part, and I'm just going to put in a semicolon at the end. Now if you want to do counterclockwise, you can put a negative value. So let me come over here and refresh my page. You can see it's rotated. Now there might be some issues here. See how the image, when you rotate, is going up in my navigational section. It might go over here in this other column. It's not fitting correctly. So let's now add some extra styles to help us enhance that area for that. So rotating is the easy part. All we did here was we applied the transform property and we told it to rotate 3 degrees. Now let's just experiment here. I want to do 45. Save, and let me browse here and refresh. As you can see here, you can rotate any element, and typically I like to rotate a div or a section on that part, but you can rotate a paragraph tag if I wanted to on that. So let me go back here and show you something real quick. So I can actually go in and I'm going to apply that rotate option to the H1 tag. So I put in H1 transform rotate. So let's take a look at what it looks like at this time. When I reload, see how it rotates the text up here at the top, this heading in the header section. So it can be used for individual elements, it can be used for div tags and so forth. So the rotate option is a great feature, just kind of add a little twist to the creativity of the design. You don't have to have everything just straight vertical on that part. Now let's improve this section over here with the image and the caption. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to my style sheet. Let me go ahead and delete this H1, and I'm going to add, I'm going to control the width of the div tag. I'm also going to add a little float option. This will make sure it floats on the right hand side, and I'm just going to want to control the width because I don't want it to go in and be too large on that. Now, as I mentioned before, we had an issue how it was actually overlapping into the navigation bar. So what we need to do here is we need to add some extra margin. So what I want to do is I want to add a little extra margin at the top, and a little bit on the left, and a little bit on the right hand side, and of course at the bottom. So in this regards, I'm going to go with a margin. I'm going to say 40 pixels at the top, and then 10 on the right, 10 at the bottom, 10 on the left. Now let's just see what it looks like as we're working with this. Okay, as you can see here, I controlled the width. Now my text is going to be right below the image. Now my image happened to be that almost very similar to that size, so that helps. But then I don't have that text wrap going over past the image. So now I'm trying to keep it together underneath so it fits perfectly on that aspect. Now the spacing's not there yet, but we will work on that in just a second. So what I want to do now is I want to add, make sure that text itself, to work with it a little bit, I'm going to go in and change the text line to be centered so it looks a little bit better. And I'm also going to go in and add a font size. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller than what it is. Again, I always like to, when I do some changes like this, if I just want to experiment and refresh, I can see that the text gets a little bit smaller and fits perfectly underneath the image. That's where you have to kind of experiment if you really want that one word to fit. Now be careful, if you go too small, the text will become too harder to read. So now what I want to do is I'm going to put a white, I want to have it feel like it's a white border around the image, kind of like a Polaroid effect. So if you remember those Polaroid pictures that we, old cameras that come out, instant cameras, I'm going to try to create that effect. Now most people go right directly to a border, which is fine in a sense, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use the padding, and that padding is going to add a little extra space between the content, which is the image, and the border. And in between, I'm going to have it filled with a background color of white. So what I'm going to do here is simply add a little extra padding of 5 pixels. So what this is going to do is going to add a little extra space around the image and the text. And then what I'm going to do is add a background color of white, and that's going to fill that in nicely. So I save it. As you can see here, see how that white comes around? And it creates like a border, but really it's not an actual border on that part. It's just your background color fill, and it happens to be the contents inside the div is smaller than the actual spacing of the div. So, and it creates a nice little interesting effect with that. Now we've already rotated this to really help this stand out a little bit more. I'm going to add a little box shadow, and we talked about box shadow in my previous style rules videos I've created, and I'm just going to add a little shadow so it comes out on the right hand side and down at the bottom. So I'm going to go in and use the box hyphen shadow to do so, and I'm changing the offset, affecting the blur, and choosing color of the shadow. So when I save this and I reload, you can see a nice gradual shadow on the corners here. It just helps it stand out from the image itself. Then lastly, I really want to move this back over because I have float right. It's going to put it on the right hand side, but I really want to move it over to the left. This is where you kind of have to know what type of sections you set up and so forth. Since I have this in the column 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over to the left a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to do an inline style because I don't want to affect the other pages. So I'm going to put this up here in my style section, and I'm going to just adjust the margin left I'm going to say negative 25 pixels. You have to experiment here. You have to know how you have your page set up. So when I reload here, see how it moves it over, kind of centering it the way I want. And then again, what we're doing here is just trying to take this image, and it's just a standard portrait view, but I'm adding a couple extra styles to help add a little creativity, help freshen up that look. And again, what I'm talking about is this kind of looks like a Polaroid effect in a sense. And I'm using HTML and CSS to create that. And here's what I'm referring to, an actual Polaroid that comes out from the camera, and then inside here would be a picture that you've taken with the camera and so forth. So again, just showing you a couple different ways to help, and I'm using the CSS transform property, and I'm using the rotate option to allow us to rotate, but then that's just not enough. I need to go in and use the other CSS styles to help us work our creativity.